everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Cynthia, and today's video is a flip through of this journal that I created. This is a Ruby and Pearl Exo design team project. So all the printables that I used in this journal are from her. There are definitely a lot of different kits that I use. So I'll try and have those on the screen and down below in the description. But on the front here, I collaged different vintage fabrics. The little floral one is from Amy from Flushie Make Cottage, and then the other ones are some trims that I found in some thrift stores. And for the closure here, I have some little chiffon ribbon as well as a little vintage blue ribbon. And I still have to add the little eyelets that will go in the holes, but I'm just waiting for those in the mail. And so when you open the journal, I've created this little pocket here with a digital print. And when you untie it, you can find some wax seals in there, as well as the label and a vintage photo. I'll be sharing a little bit more about my inspiration and kind of what inspired all of the journals that I'm currently working on in the video, where I'll also talk about how you can purchase one if you're interested. And the first face of this journal is a beautiful piece that was embossed. It was sent to me by Heather from Ruby and Pearl, and I just thought it was the perfect piece as a welcoming statement into the journal. Then it's followed by a vintage piece of music sheet that has another piece of that really pretty floral fabric. And then here you have a printable, and I've added a little tag. I followed Heather's tutorial that she shared last week, and I just had to create some. So that's my go at it. And flipping through, this is a vintage piece of paper, and then I have a little envelope here that I filled with some stamps. And this is a letter from the 60s with then a piece of cabbage dyed paper that has a vintage lace onto it. And this is a vintage paper. I believe that's from a storybook. And then I've created a little bit of ephemera here. This is a picture from a storybook. And then this here is another printable. And I folded it, and then it's backed onto some tea stained paper or coffee dyed paper, I'm not sure. But I won't open it fully. But once you open it, then you can do kind of like some secret journaling before closing it back up. And the other side of that cabbage dyed paper and vintage letter, as well as vintage invoice paper. And that's a little pocket here. So I'm just showing you that it's a pocket. And then here you have another printable. So that's a journaling card that I created, and it has a little bit of a flap. So I just tucked it onto the page and created another little label with another piece of a print. Of course, you could move those anywhere you wish. And the other side of that music page. And then here I have a book page that I did some texture onto, and then I added this little journaling card that I created with that vintage lady, where I put a little bit of a cluster of charms and whatnot. And then another journaling card. And here I have a little envelope that holds a few different items. So in here you can find some handmade pieces. I have like these little stamps, like little piece of ephemera, a little cluster, this vintage card, as well as a vintage tag and a vintage playing card. And some more, I believe that's cabbage dyed paper. I skipped a page. And here we have another printable. That one is from one of the wallpapers, I think, but again, that will be on the screen. And this is a page from the actual book that I altered. And then here you have another journaling card with some vintage trim, my goodness. And this is another print here. That's one of my favorite. And this here is just like a little vintage card. And then that's like an invoice, or it's just a really pretty paper. It's from the 60s. I got that in a Happy Mail from Sarah. And to the other side of that, I added this New Year's postcard. This book kind of felt a little bit wintry to me. Of course, there's not a ton of very specific winter things in there, so it can be whatever you wish it to be. But yeah, that was just my feelings about it. And a little trim of fabric. The other side of that printable. And then here's the only other wintry kind of thing that I added in there. It's a vintage card. And then I slid some little vintage tickets in there. It's like a tiny pocket. And just some trim onto this really pretty printable. And this here is some natural aging of a book page. It is ripped at the bottom. I left it be. If it bothers you, obviously you can just snip that part that kind of comes down. And this here is a tag that I created. I do have a video on how I create these tags. And another piece of that fabric, which doubles up as a little tuck spot that you can use on that page. This is a vintage book page. And then here I have this little envelope. And in there I added the calendar for December and January. You are able to find the full year on Ruby and Pearls Etsy, but as I said, this kind of felt wintry to me, so I added the December and January months. And that's just added onto some coffee stained paper. And this here is a vintage, I'm not sure what it would be called, but that was a printable. I think it's like a form you would fill out for like what you're ordering form. I'm not sure. And here is some handmade paper and another one of those tags and some vintage trims. And the other side of that book page, along with some cabbage dyed paper, vintage papers, more coffee dyed paper, as well as the tracing paper. And here we have another printable. And on there I added this little sample card that I made. And it just has a couple pieces of some of the trims that I used in there. And then here you have a couple journaling cards. One is created with a printable. And then there's another pocket up here. A vintage dictionary page. and this print here. And this is my favorite. It's Angel's Dream. So I just thought that was so sweet, and it just kind of it went so well with the blue of that print. So felt like it was perfect for this page. And then in here, I have like this vintage piece. It's like a vintage tag of some sort, and this journaling card that I created with one of the ladies. And just a trim here, paper bag, the other side of that printable, some tracing paper, and coffee stain paper, and that's the inside. And that's it for this little journal. I just love this journal so much. This is definitely one that I don't want to be parting ways with, but I can't keep all the journals. So, like I said, I'll have some more information coming in the next weeks or so. And I thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you're doing really well, and I'll talk to you in my next one. Bye now.